Hello, I am Chris Messier with the Bon Secours Memorial College of Nursing, and today I'll be speaking with you about our theoretical disaster evacuation site, which will be found at Logan Elementary School. Kind of giving some general information about Logan Elementary School, we're going to assume that this evacuation site is off a main highway, or at a minimum, it's along a designated evacuation route, which should make it easy for evacuees to find and arrive at. It's a hardened structure, as you can see in the pictures. So, we know it's brick and mortar on the outside, and like most schools, the interior walls are also going to be brick and mortar, so it should be able to sustain up to, at a minimum, hurricane speed winds and provide, a strong sheltered environment. The square footage for most elementary schools ranges somewhere between 50 and 90,000 square feet. So it's a pretty large facility, which should be able to sustain a lot of evacuees and all the other things that we might need it for. The facility is going to be capable of being locked. There's going to be external entry points which we can lock, and then by locking those doors, we can funnel traffic to the doors that we want them to come into for in-processing, out-processing, and everything else. There's a large parking lot, so that's perfect for logistical support and also allowing evacuees who are arriving in their vehicles to park and then enter the facility. There should be some form of backup power. We may not have power at all the outlets, but at a minimum, there's going to be emergency lighting inside that will provide lights even in the event of us losing power, and so we can get generators and other forms of temporary lighting set up. The facility should also have HVAC, so it's going to be temperature controlled, which again means we can maintain some level of suitable temperature as long as we have power. Additionally, the facility also has restrooms, so again, assuming we have power, plumbing, and everything else is still working, we should be able to maintain a sanitary disaster site. In terms of the layout of the facility and how we'd use it as our disaster center, so I kind of envision the cafeteria serving as our in and out processing area. So upon the initial operations, that's where we take everybody in, figure out who they are, perform our basic triage, and then we'd also, in reverse, use the same thing for them out processing. Depending on the length of the evacuation requirement, we could also issue meals from there, whether it be as cooking meals, because there would be a fully operational kitchen, or we're just handing out box meals, MREs, whatever it may be. The gymnasium would be our primary sleeping quarters for single adults or families who are comfortable sleeping in that area. For families that we need to segregate for whatever reasons, we could use the 1st through 4th grade classrooms. And then we could use the kindergarten classroom for families that have children with special needs or adults with special needs that we just need to provide either a greater sense of security or just remove them from all the extreme stimulation that they might have being in that gymnasium sleeping area. So the resource classrooms of the facility, we'd use that as our temporary medical center. There's offices there where the interprofessional team could meet and gather and discuss patient care and everything else. And those offices could also be used to provide private medical treatments, whether we need to do emergent surgery or just have a private place to perform any type of medical procedures. The school offices would be where the emergency management operations center would be. So if there was an incident commander who was on site, that's where they would be. Liaison officers, whatever, other people from the NIMS that might be present, that's where they could set up shop and manage the evacuation. The 5th grade classroom, we'd try to save that for pets and any other, special needs that don't really fit into the niche of all the other little things we already have set up within the facility. So again, depending on the length of stay of the evacuation, we could use the reception area for spiritual care if need be. And then the art and music room, we could make those designated play areas for any evacuees if this is going to be a prolonged evacuation. So regarding our interprofessional team, the nurses, they're going to serve as our primary triage support. Depending on their level of licensure, at a minimum, they all can perform some level of basic triage. So we can at least, as we're in processing people, figure out who needs to be seen first, who are the walking well, if there's ambulatory or non-ambulatory patients. And the nurses are going to be able to provide some form of basic medical care. And that quality of care is just going to be improved depending on the other healthcare professionals that we have at the evacuation site. So if there's doctors, APRNs, OTs, PTs, speech pathologists, whatever type of additional support that we have, that just improves our operational capabilities. Additionally, that all the nurses are going to be able to provide some form of holistic treatment to the evacuees, whether it be, asking, understanding how to ask questions, understanding how to comfort them emotionally and physically, and just really kind of providing that psychosocial support, which leads us into another member of the team, which would be the social worker. They're definitely going to be much better, maybe not much better, they're going to be more proficient in addressing some of those concerns, especially when it comes to disasters, because it kind of falls into their wheelhouse. They're going to be able to help them identify any local and national resources that might be available to them, depending on the type of evacuation that we're having. So maybe they lost their house, they can help them find, the tools and resources that they need to deal with that. And they can also help connect those evacuees with other support groups, again, to minimize the harms of the disaster. If the Red Cross was present, they're an NGO. They specialize in disaster and emergency management, so they're going to be well versed in how to, provide aid to the evacuees. They're going to help the team on ground understand, resource requirements, burn rates of food, water, and everything else like that. And again, they're going to be able to help aid in those resources. So they have access to a greater donation pool, larger funding pool. They have stockpiled supplies and resources. And another thing that the Red Cross is really great at is their emergency messaging system. So they're fantastic of notifying families of the status of evacuees. The incident command team, so again, they're going to be providing that overall disaster mitigation supervision. They're going to provide all the operational support. They're going to be the ones in charge of allocating resources. So they're going to have their little operations center somewhere within the facility if that's where they deemed to operate out of. And then any other volunteer organizations, we're not going to turn down help, but all of that's going to be routed through the incident command / operations center. Sometimes you might just have too many hands in the pot that really aren't making things easier on everything. So by directing them to the incident commander, they can properly delegate, any task that the team on ground isn't able to self-sustain. So with respect to triage, so again, the cafeteria will serve as that initial triage and in-processing center. So the nurses will be there. Again, we're going to start identifying the walking well, the people who are just in a panic because it's an evacuation, but there's really nothing physically wrong with them. So they're going to be able to, kind of provide that initial triage and sort them to make them feel like that they aren't being left behind, but also allowing the limited number of nurses and healthcare professionals to not waste time and resources on people who don't really need it. We can also establish an ambulatory and non-ambulatory ambulatory and non-ambulatory setup. Again, depending on the type of disaster that this is, we might need to have a reception area for people who are gravely injured who can't walk. So how we can take them into the evacuation center and provide them the care that they need. After that initial triage, anybody who definitely needs further triage will be sent back to that resource classroom because they're going to be our priority cases. This way we can get them the care that they need to keep them safe and hopefully free of further harm. So once, all this has been finished and we're in the process of finishing up the evacuation, we're going to have a discharge. Again, we're going to use that cafeteria for that out processing. We'll have the social workers there, the nurses, the Red Cross, any of the volunteer organizations. And this is really going to be to, one, make sure that everybody who came in also leaves, that we identify people who need further support. It may be that, hey, they don't have a house to go to because the emergency, that the disaster that occurred took away their home. So we might be able to help them find a place to, to stay temporarily. Maybe the state declared a state of emergency and they already have another, long-term evacuation shelter, or it's a federal disaster where now the federal government is stepping in and applying their resources. And again, this is where we're going to use those social workers because that's something they're really adept at, is tapping into those lifelines to get people the help that they need. And they're also going to be really good at creating a division of labor. They're going to be the ones who are more confident in determining the needs of the evacuees, and they can help set up, hey, these people don't need anything, these people need a lot of time, so we're going to put them over here. These people need a little bit of help, we'll send them to the Red Cross or whomever it may be. So that's kind of where the social workers are really going to show their strength in this emergency, is on the back end. And again, like I said, we'll use the Red Cross and the other volunteer organizations to provide assistance to families who don't really need a lot of support, but we do want to give them something on their way out. So that concludes my presentation. You'll notice that there wasn't a reference slide. I'm kind of relying on my 20 years of Army experience, where the career field that I was in, we did a lot of disaster management. I was in a hazardous response team, so we trained a lot with civilian agencies. So none of this is really new to me. I'm very familiar with the NIMS and the ICS and FEMA, so that is why you do not see me referencing any additional information. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.